Okay, so we're in the Maimer of Ata Barachim Harabim, Tafshim Memches. We're holding chapter 6. So what we've been saying is that there are three miracles that occur Hanukkah. The first miracle is the military victory. That was a great miracle, like we say in the Val Nissim, the many in the hands of the few, and the weak in the mighty in the hands of the mighty in the hands of the weak, etc. So that was a miracle. That was one miracle. That miracle takes place on the 24th of Kislev. Then you have the miracle of finding the oil. The fact that the Greeks somehow managed to miss one, and not only that they missed one, but that the Maccabees, and they come back into the temple to rededicate the temple, can find it, that's also a miracle. And then you have the third miracle, which is the oil that was only enough for one day, lasting 8 days. So we said that these three miracles are three different levels of expressing God's oneness. So you have Yehuda Tata, Yehuda Ilah, and Havaya de La'ela. Those are the three terms that we've been throwing around. So Yehuda Tata means how a person can recognize that all of reality is only a conditional existence, an existence that's only brought about through God. Why is it called Yehuda Tata, the lower level unity? Why is it a lower level unity? Because it's unity in that we see that the world doesn't have its independent existence, its existence only from God. But how do we come to God? From the existence of the world. So he creates a great world, and when we see the great world, and we know that all of this only exists conditionally, it's not natural. Existence is not a natural thing, it's only from God, so we come to appreciate the great creator. So we see the world is not separated from God, but the world still is something significant. How do I know from God? I know of him from the very real world that he created, right? Higher than that is Yehuda Ilah. Yehuda Ilah, the higher unity. What's the higher unity? That means that we recognize that as great as the universe is, which shows the greatness of the Creator, it doesn't even scratch the surface. Because God exists on a level far beyond creation. So that's already the higher level of unity, where the world itself is insignificant. So in Yehuda Tata, the lower unity, the world is very significant. It's not that it has its independent existence. So it's totally batal, to use the words of the Chassidic terminology, that it's totally nullified. Its existence is only God bringing it into existence, but it's very significant in that it tells me about the greatness of God. But when I realize that the world itself is insignificant to God, so that already is the higher level of unity, where the world itself is insignificant. It doesn't tell me anything about God, but that's true. But so the world itself then is insignificant in that scenario. Exactly. Then you have Havaya Delay, the higher level of Havaya, which is God as he exists beyond even taking on the form of creator. God as he is beyond even becoming a creator. So there is totally nothing. Nothing. It's only God. So there's oneness, which we say in the Shema. That's Yehuda Ilah. The higher level of unity is oneness. Right? Meaning one implies two. So we see that in a place where it seems that there's two, there's a world, there's some kind of existence, we say it's one, it's only God. But then you have Yachid, the only, where God is the only existence, there is nothing else. The truth is that the two lower levels, Yehuda Ilah and Yehuda Tata, the term itself, unity. Unity implies that there's something else that's united, right? So you come to a oneness. So in both instances, there's a world. Whether it's a world that's totally subservient to God, or it's a world that's insignificant, but still there's something. There's a unity. Whereas Havaya Delay, we're not talking about any unity. There's just Havaya, there's just God. Okay, and so the Rebbe connects these three levels with the three miracles. So when there's a war, the Maccabees have to, the Hashmonaim have to go to war with their enemies. So that is a miracle that takes place through the natural order of things. That there's an enemy, you got to deal with the enemy. Then you have the finding of the oil, which, as we explained, we'll revisit it again. The finding of the oil represents a level of holiness, of purity, that no forces of evil can contaminate, no force of evil can access it. So that's holiness as it's beyond reality, beyond creation, right? So in creation you have forces, you have good and evil, and they can duel, they can fight. But then you have a level where there's only good, there is no evil. Evil can't access that. Nevertheless, that miracle also happens through natural means. They have to find the oil. And then you have the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days, which defies all the laws of nature. Everything is totally beyond any of that. I think maybe, let's move into chapter 6. Let's move forward. Okay. So in chapter 5, we said like this. So the Rebbe says in chapter 5, we left off yesterday, that the fact that, so we have these three levels. You have Yehuda Tata, Yehuda Ilah, and you have Havaya Delay. Then the Rebbe said that this Havaya de Le'ela, this total unity of God, of oneness of God, the onlyness of God, that level where there's nothing else, that is the underlying current in all three miracles. Why? Because we said in the Maimer that let's go with the lowest miracle, right, the lowest level miracle, which is where they had to fight a war. What prompts a group of underdogs to take on the mighty Syrian Greek Empire? Mesiras Nefesh is self-sacrifice. They felt that they couldn't take the oppression anymore, that the Syrian Greek government was banning Jewish practice and ritual, and they said, we can't, that's not how it works. We're going to do what we have to do, right? We're going to stand strong and committed in our Jewish faith. And if it means going to war, we're going to go to war. And so they go to war with them. That's an expression of self-sacrifice. Where does a person get the strength for self-sacrifice? It comes from the essence of the soul. Right? That level where there could be, where it can't be in any other way. And so, even though we're talking about Yichud Tata, but the fact that we're talking about Mesiras Nefesh, that they have self-sacrifice, that represents a level of unity, or of accessing the essence of the soul that's higher than all of this. And so therefore we see that the motivation for engaging in the war is something that comes from higher than just that Yichud Tata level. Okay? Right? And again, we've explained in the past. So 1 second. So we've explained in the past, though, just to finish this point about Mesiras Nefesh, what we mean by Mesiras Nefesh, when we talk about the Jewish concept of Mesiras Nefesh, certainly when Chassidus talks about it, means that it's not possible in any other way. It's a conviction that's not given to debate. So it's not like you have an enemy, you start weighing your options, maybe we'll go to war, maybe we won't go to war, and we decide, we're going to go to war. The Mesiras Nefesh means that there is no other alternative. That's right. Yeah, but there's no alternative. This is the way it has to be. Right? So that represents a much higher level. So then however, nevertheless, it's still Yichud Tata. Why? Because it is expressed through a war, meaning through natural order. They still went to war. So think about the contrast. There's a Mesiras Nefesh that's expressed through levushim, as he says here, and clothed in the natural means, and then there's a Mesiras Nefesh that's not. The difference would be, let's say, like Hanukkah and Purim. What happened Purim? Purim also we had an enemy that was threatening us. And what did the Jews do? They fasted and they repented and they gathered together, and none of them, even though they could have gotten out of the threat, they would not be threatened if they gave up if they renounced their faith and joined the Persian Empire, that culture. None of them ever even entertained the thought. But nobody went to fight Haman. What brought about the end of that decree? What brought about the miracle? The fact that they sat and they learned Torah. They were gathering Makil Kilis Harabim. They went and they sat and learned Torah. So that's a miracle. That's a Mesiras Nefesh, meaning an inner conviction that nobody betrayed their Jewish faith, but it didn't express itself in the natural order of going to then fight. It was, they stood, steadfast in their conviction. That was it. Whereas Hanukkah, it involved going into battle. So that's what it means, that it was enclosed into the natural order of things. Now we're going to continue explaining this in chapter 6. So, right? What was the self-sacrifice of Matasio and his children? Was the fact that they fought with the Greeks. That the fact that now Matasio and his children they were triggered. To put it in modern terms. The Syrian Greeks touched the nerve and they were triggered. And what happened? They realized, we're not going to give in to this pressure. We're going to be strong in our commitment to God. We're not going to be movable. And yet what they do, what happened after that? They said, there's an enemy, we have to go fight the enemy. Right? Which means that Mesiras Nefesh then played out in their the koiches hagulim of the neshama, the revealed aspects of it. In other words, in their everyday life. When that revelation of the essence when the essence of the soul is expressed as it is, just as it is on its own, since on that level there is no opposition, that the result is that self-sacrifice, that means you don't even think about your enemy. Right? In other words, like we said before about Purim, they had Mesiras Nefesh, but nobody thought about Haman. The story in the Medrash, Haman goes and he meets these school kids, and he asks them, "What did you learn in school today?" And they said, "Let's wait. The different psukim." They looked at him and they were mocking him. They didn't think of the big bad. They had Mesiris Nefesh, and they were committed, and they were doing their thing, and the other forces had no impact on them. So that's Mesiris Nefesh, that's Yechida as it's expressed in its own state, in its own condition, where it doesn't come down to the natural, everyday kind of occurrence. It is on a level where there is no Haman. The fact that Matisyahu and his sons Mesiris Nefesh was expressed in the fact that they fought their enemy. That's because their Mesiris Nefesh was the essence of their soul was revealed in a way that it then was expressed in their inner abilities and was brought into their everyday lives. And so they carried that over into international war. Let's look at notes 31 and 32, yeah? Note 31. So he said that we're contrasting them. Mesiris Nefesh about the CEO and his children came through fighting. Right? So if that came through fighting, maybe they had Mesiris Nefesh to fight, to go to war, but then once they're going to war, they're in a war. Right? So the Rebbe says, right? Even though they went to war, but the type of war, even once they're engaged in it, was a Mesiris Nefesh war. In other words, the fact that they went to war is because they were compelled. So on the one hand, we're saying the fact that they went to war shows that it's a lower level, it's the way the Yechida is expressed, is enclosed in Yechuda Tata, in everyday sort of life. But on the other hand, even so, when they were fighting the war, it was because they were compelled to. Like Yechida, there's no other alternative. The artist Nekudas Alevi Mashemer Primis Alev L'Chitzonius Alev. It says, you're going to go to war against your enemies. But it doesn't say when you go against your enemies, it says on your enemies. You go to war on your enemies. What does it mean on your enemies? Higher than your enemies. Meaning, this shows two things. Number one, the fact that in the Bible, it talks about the inner workings of the heart and the outer part of the heart. We're not going to get into that now, we don't have time. But the point is that there's a level, when there's the inner part of the heart, nevertheless, what happens? On one hand, we're saying, there is an enemy. So even though we know that in the deeper part of the heart, there is no enemy, as we've been explaining about Yechida, nevertheless, here the person has an enemy. Why? Because even though it's the inner part of the heart, the Pnimis Alev, it's still something that has is expressed in the outer part of the heart, to which there is an enemy. But in other words, since it stems from the inner part where there is no enemy, so even though they're on the outer level, there is an enemy, and you're engaged in battle with that enemy, nevertheless, the type of war is that it's on your enemy, above it, over your enemy. In other words, it's like they had to go to war, and it was a very grueling war, for sure, at the time of Hanukkah, but it was almost as if it was inevitable, the victory. In other words, because they were going with Mesiris Nefesh, so even though it was a war, so that is connected with the external part of the neshama, the lower levels, the one in which there is an opposition, in which you have to engage in war. Nevertheless, it was Alei Vecha, it was still above it, because it was coming from Yechida that was higher, because the war was being fought in a way of Mesiris Nefesh, which there's no alternative. And on that level, there is no enemy. So automatically, you go to war above your enemy, right over them. Note 32. So he says that the Yechida is the way it's shaykh to Koiches Agluim, that even though they're accessing their Yechida, but nevertheless it's as it is connected to the external faculties or the conscious faculties of the soul. So this is note 32. In other words, it seems that this is a negative thing. The fact that they went to war, Mesiris Nefesh, even though Mesiris Nefesh is a very high thing, but the fact they went to war shows that it's a lower level, because it's engaging the natural order. Right? So the Rebbe says, nevertheless, there is an advantage. So that seems to be a downside. So nevertheless, there's an advantage to this as well. Why? You could, in the times of Haman, so they had the Mesiris Nefesh, but Haman was still Haman. He was still running around as the prime minister. He was still running around, having everybody bow to him, and he was still living the high life until things turned for him, right? And then eventually he meets his demise. But here, we're talking about a situation where you're meeting the enemy in the enemy's space. Evil, battleground, war, that's the That's the domain of the enemy, of klippa, of unholiness. And yet the Jews took their Mesiris Nefesh and met the enemy on their terms. And so therefore they were able to vanquish them and defeat them on their own at their own game. So there's an advantage to that. We're going to get into this topic a little bit more soon. This idea that just it's one thing to say there is no world, right? It's another thing to live in the world and say there is no world. That's even more profound, right? As we're gonna soon see. Okay, so so the fact is that they had Mesiris Nefesh. True that their Mesiris Nefesh, the self-sacrifice of the Chashmonaim, was one that stems from Yechida, from the essence of the soul. Nevertheless, it was enclosed in natural means and into what level? To a place where there's an enemy, where the enemy is strong. What does it mean that you have we talked about, we asked this question yesterday, right? Why do we say Gibor Biad Chalashim? Why do we say it? It seems to be like a derogatory thing. Why do we have to say the word Chalashim? Say they're big and they're strong and we're not as strong. No. But what's the point? Because we're using their terminology. In this world, this cold, hard, evil, dark world, there's Giborim and there's Chalashim. There's the strong and the weak. There's the good and there's the evil. And the evil seems, like it says, Shaklipas Goivrim Boy, the Lashon from Tanya. That the force of unholiness seemed to be dominating. That's the dark reality that they were facing. And nevertheless, they go toward the Shem. They're the big, they're the favorite, and we're the underdog. And nevertheless, they went and fought them there. So now we can understand. We asked yesterday if it's Mesiris Nefesh, it's Yechida. If so, how are we calling this miracle of the war? How are we calling that Yechudat Hata, the lower level? So he says we can understand it. Why? Because sin, even though it's drawing a light from higher than Ishtalshus, from higher than the created reality, Yechudat Hata. Right? So this is the idea that why we can call it Yechudat Tata, because even though it's taka from Yechid, it's coming from a level that's higher than Shtalshus. That is where the Chashmonaim had the strength and the courage to be able to take on the enemy. Nevertheless, they took on the enemy. It was a miracle that came about through the natural sort of means. And the Rebbe says, note 34, this is the idea of subduing the yesh, meaning that it's not a total, it's Chav Dalid, so therefore it's Yechudat Hata. That's what the feat happens on the 24th. That's the idea of Yechudat Hata, that it's the idea of Bittul Hayesh. We said Yechudat Hata is Bittul Hayesh, meaning that we have this awareness that there's a world that's totally submitted to God. But you can't call it Bittul B'Mitzis, you can't call it the ultimate nullification, because the world is significant in the fact that it at least points to God. So it is significant. What's its significance? That it's totally subservient to God. But that's called Bittul Hayesh, not Bittul B'Mitzis. So in other words, they're fighting a war, so in a way, it's not that they're disregarding their enemy, they're considering their enemy. Their enemy is significant. In fact, they look at their enemy and they say they're the many and they're the strong, they're the mighty. So you're giving room for that perspective, for that concept, for that reality, and nevertheless they went and defeated them. But after the war, then they reach. Then this light gets drawn in a higher way. They find a little jug of oil still with the seal of the high priest. What is it, the significance of this miracle? Is that there is no opposition. When it's sealed, so they're not able to contaminate it. So it's not just that it's sealed and so therefore they're incapable of contaminating what's in it. So because if so, you could say there's an enemy, but because something's locked up, it's like you have your house, nobody robbed you yesterday because you have a lock on your door, right? So that doesn't tell me that your neighborhood's a safe neighborhood. It just tells me that you have a good security system, right? But when it's chasam b'chaysam mishal kohen gadol, what does that mean? It's not about preventative measures. It's a level where it's not possible for it to happen. They can't touch such a level, as we've explained in the past. So we won't revisit it again now. Nevertheless, even this miracle was also a miracle that was enclosed in nature. The fact that they found it means it wasn't something that was out of the natural. It wasn't totally out of the natural order. In other words, they come to the temple, they start rededicating the temple. The place is a wreck; it's destroyed. Right? They start cleaning it up. They start purifying it. They're looking through all the oil, and they finally search and find an oil. It wasn't like suddenly this jug of oil comes floating down from heaven, on a little cloud. And that was the miracle. That would be an unusual miracle, an unnatural miracle. But here was they searched and they found. So it's a miracle. And as we said, the miracle is in the finding, and the miracle is in the fact that it existed. That there is representing the level that can't be affected by the forces of impurity. But nevertheless, it's not completely unnatural. Yeah, this is, we can understand why in the Maimon the Friedrich Rebbe says that this miracle of finding the oil is Yichud Ilah, the higher unity, which, as we said, is Havaya Delasata, the higher unity, which is the lower name Havaya. Right? Havaya, as he is the Mahava, as he's the creator. Why? Because on this level, there is no room for opposition. Nevertheless, Shem Havaya Delasata, the lower level of Havaya, is Havaya as he is the Mahava, as he's the creator. In other words, that gives that allows room for there to be a creation. So Yichud Ilah, as we said, the higher unity is that the world is insignificant. But what's insignificant? The world. So there's still a world that's insignificant. But then you have the higher miracle, which is the oil lasting for 8 days, which has no place in nature. There's no way to explain that miracle. Right? So that's a miracle that totally defies any laws of nature, and that's the highest level. That's godliness sort of unfiltered in a way that there's no, right? There's it's not at all enclosed in nature. So v'yesh lo hisif. Going back to what we said now in chapter 5, that the fact that we said, in other words, here we just explained, now in chapter 6, first paragraph, we're explaining the different levels of the miracle. Why one is Yichud Tata, Yichud Ilah, and finally higher Avayda Le'elah, higher than Yichud Ilah. And we said one is enclosed in nature to a stronger degree. It's enclosed in nature in a way that there's a war, and you know who's going to win. There could be casualties on both sides and so on. And then you have a higher level. It's in nature. They searched and they found, but it was a level that can't be affected by the enemy. And then you have one that totally defies any of these laws. That's a level where there's nothing other than God, right? But we said earlier that that idea, that light of godliness, that as it's totally beyond reality, is in both the other two miracles as well. So the Rebbe explains. The fact that we said that these other miracles, the victory and the finding of the oil, also come from the higher level of Havaya, which is higher than creation. It's just that they are lower in the sense that they are enclosed in these levels of Yichud Tata and Yichud Ilah. It's because they. How do we say that? It's because these miracles were a preparation that brought about the other ones. If you look at these miracles alone, all you see is Yichud Tata and Yichud Ilah. So imagine that there is the victory over the Greeks. That's a great miracle, and that's wonderful. But imagine, God forbid, they didn't find oil, and there was no miracle of 8 days. So that would just be Yichud Tata, right? Or if you've had the oil and it didn't last for 8 days, also that would be Yichud Ilah, but that would be it. But the fact is, by the Shem Nes the Nitzachna Muhammad Hayasibala Nes the Mitzis Pach Hashem and Kenal B'Tchil Samaimer Hine Lach Shenas Bay Bapach Shematzu Nes V'Idliku Mimenu Shmeni Yamim Aydezenim Shechila Vayda Leila Shel Malam Mishtashas Gam By Nes the Mitzis Pach Hashem and Gam By Nes the Nitzachna Muhammad. Let's look at it the other way. Without the victory, the military victory, there's no going back to reclaim the temple and finding the oil. And without finding the oil, there's no miracle for the oil burning for 8 days. So each one, they're all linked together. It's through the war that they were able to come back and reclaim the temple and then rededicate it and be able to find the oil. And once they find the oil, now they're able to have the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days. So we see that they're all connected. So the fact, and it's right. But it's not just that it's all connected, but one leads to the other. So therefore, how is it possible? Everybody's basically saying this. You see that it's the reason, the Sibel Anes the Mitzis Pach Hashem, right? Each one's the reason for the next. How could it be that a victory of a military victory, which as we've been explaining is Yichud Tata, how does that bring you to Havai de Le'ela? How do you get from one to the next? One doesn't lead into the other. It's not. It doesn't, you look at this world and you study science, and the more you appreciate the world, the more you can come to appreciate a creator. But if your whole frame of reference of the awesomeness of your creator is only science, how are you going to get to Yichud Eilah? You can't. You're going to be limited. So the more you know about this world, the more you'll appreciate the creator, the greater he'll be. But if there's nothing for you outside of that, you can't go beyond just what you see, then you're never going to get to that next level. So that's another track. How does one lead to the next? So the only way is if we're saying that the miracle of the victory, the military victory, is the cause that brings about, it's through that we then get to the next one. So how is it a cause that then leads to that effect? It's because already the other thing is already embedded in there. Meaning that already in the military victory there has to be something higher. And as we've explained before, what led them to battle is Yichud Nefesh, Mesiras Nefesh. So it's already embedded in there. And that's how you can go from a Yichud Tata to Yichud Eilah, from there to Havai de Le'ela.
But in our example, we said that the Muhammad wasn't really Yichud Tata.
We're saying really it's Havai de Le'ela, right? But enclosed in Yichud Tata. What?
The Muhammad was on their enemies and it was not real Mesiras Nefesh like in its natural state.
It was real. You had to.
It was Mesiras Nefesh as it takes on the natural, as it comes through natural means. What is Mesiras Nefesh? It was still Mesiras Nefesh. That's what we said in Hara, what was it? In Hara 32, in 31, right? That it's still Mesiras Nefesh.
You know what really wants to match. The cause was Mesiras Nefesh, but though the Milchama Alein Eichel Yom Mesiras Nefesh.
Right. That even in it, exactly, you have both things together. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, but we still have the question as to why, now, if we're going to say that really, even in the military victory, you really have already there, Havai Delay, the highest level, so this all only reinforces the question we asked in the beginning of the Maimer, which is, if we're establishing Hanukkah for the military victory, why aren't we establishing on the day of the military victory, on Chav Dalet? Right, so in a sense, this only reinforces that question.
You brought you up to a higher level.
But if so then you could say before it seemed like what we were saying was that because the military victory is a lower miracle, it's not a miracle that's worthy enough of having a holiday established for it, right? But now we're saying, but if it's the trigger and it's already in there, so then why not? So that's the Rebbe explains. This is Zion, chapter 7. This is now why Chanukah is established on the 25th of Kislev, which is the miracle of the oil. Because when do we find the true nature, when do we realize the true nature of the military victory? On Chafei, the next day, when there's the miracle of the oil. That's how, because if we only had the military victory, now we can explain after the fact that since we see the military victory led to all these other things, so obviously embedded in that victory is Havai de Le'ela, is that higher level where there's only God, there's nothing else. But if I didn't have the other things, I only had the military victory, there'd be no indication that that's the case. It could just be Yichud Tata. You look at one of the greatest miracles in Jewish history, the 6-Day War. And at the time, after the war, after that victory, everybody was saying, there's a miracle, biblical proportions. And yet today, we're wondering, are there miracles? There was no burning oil afterwards. So what, was it not a miracle? Of course it was a miracle. The problem is, if you don't see that next step, so it's a miracle and it's not at the highest level and all those things, and there's an incredibly serious, and it led to, it transformed everything. Even today, we're still affected by that. But on the other hand, if it's just that, there's no indication. And what will happen? You kind of lose it in a sense.
How did the victory lead to the ness of the oil? What is the
How'd they get back into the temple? The Maccabees, the Chashmonaim were in Modi'in. They were not even in Yerushalayim. They couldn't even get there. The Syrian Greeks had control of the Beis HaMikdash.
Seems like two different miracles.
After they won, they kicked them out of Jerusalem, and then they go back and they can reclaim the temple. So it's a direct result. Because they were able to chase them out, they were able to go back.
We didn't find the oil because
No, but it was the victory is what made it possible to even search and find it. Right. That's what we're saying. It's a preparation for it. You're right. It's a
Finding the oil is not a consequence of winning the war.
correct. The finding of it is not a consequence of it, but it's the result of it. Right? And so if you're going to look at it on the spiritual plane, if we're looking at it in the terms that we're talking about, Yichud Tata and Yichud Ilah, if it's the Yichud Tata that then brings about, as a result of that, we can then reach that next stage, it means that has to be there. So the way you're talking about how it happens, actually, you can't really call it, I mean, in a sense you can call it a reason and consequence.
It's a result because it
Right.
wasn't possible before and now it is possible.
Right. But in the spiritual sense, you can call it more of a cause and effect. That one leads to the next. Okay, let's see if we can try and finish this. We're going to have to hustle.
The inspiration for the Torah, do you think it's a
Right, triggers the whole thing. So why is it? Because it's already embedded in there. So till now we're talking about the advantage of Yichud Ilah versus Yichud Tata. Yichud Ilah is higher. Yichud Tata is the lower one. This is where you have Bittul Hayesh, you only have the small thing. But yet, there's still an advantage to Yichud Tata over Yichud Ilah. Generally, if you have a cause and effect, the cause is a lot stronger than the effect. So if it's the Yichud Tata that brings the Yichud Ilah, so there's a certain advantage to it. What's the advantage to Yichud Tata over Yichud Ilah? We've been talking Yichud Ilah is a higher unity, so it's higher, so it's greater. Why is it? What's the advantage of Yichud Tata over Yichud Ilah? Because we mentioned before, like we said before, you could sit. It's like they say, a guy says money is nothing, right? So for somebody who has no money to say money is nothing, it's a big deal. You don't have any money. You know money is nothing. It's for somebody who has money, who spends his time, making money, to say money is nothing. That statement that's a more informed statement. So to come Yichud Ilah, this is the Shtakin Welt. You live on a mountaintop somewhere. You're isolated. You're stuck in a yeshiva somewhere. So who was it? Moshe Garari who said that in yeshiva when they were in Tem Chitun in Lubavitch, so they were learning Mamarim, they learned Chassidus, and Chassidus talks about challenges, that the world is a concealment of godliness, and it poses a challenge to God. The Bachrim yeshiva in Lubavitch, in the middle of nowhere, they're sitting in yeshiva, so they had to believe with pure faith that there's a world, and that the world buzzes, but in yeshiva you have to take it on faith. So where do you really get to experience it? So for a balabas, for somebody who's in business, to come to realize that the world is really nothing is a much greater statement than for somebody in yeshiva to say that, right? So there's an advantage to Yichud Tata over Yichud Ilah. The fact that we can be in the world and recognize it, and it's significant to us, and yet still say it's nothing, there's an advantage to that, right? Nevertheless, having said that, when does Yichud Tata fully reach its full impact is when it's infused with the awareness of Yichud Ilah. So therefore we see. So now we answer the question: why is Chanukah established for Chaf Hey on the 25th and not on the 24th? Because the 24th itself is only Yichud Tata. When you get to the 25th and you find the oil, now we recognize that what was going on yesterday was also infused with the Yichud Ilah. And so now we can establish a holiday. So it's in the question, the premise of the question was that Chanukah is established also for the war. So it would be appropriate to establish on the day of the victory, right? The fact that it's not on the day of the victory seems to say that somehow we're sliding the war. So the answer here now becomes no. The best way to commemorate the war is on the 25th, not on the 24th. And on the 25th, we're actually commemorating the war, but in its truer sense, the true significance and symbolism of the victory, which is realized when? On the 25th, when you access that Yichud Ilah. If so then why we didn't answer the other question, which is why aren't we establishing something on the 26th, the greatest miracle of all of them? The reason why on the 26th they didn't add anything, as explained in the Maimer, because the true nature of this awareness, when do we really experience this? There's nothing other than Hashem, that total unity of oneness of godliness, or the unity of God, that's only Lasid Lavei. right? That's only when Mashiach comes. Like it says that the harp of the times of Mashiach is of 8 strands. In the Beis Hamikdash, the harp of in the Beis Hamikdash was of 7 strings, 7 notes. The 8th note, that is l'asur lavei. So meaning 8, which is higher than reality, right? Than higher than Shalosh, as we've explained before. So that's why we didn't establish anything new on the 26th, because that miracle, even though ultimately we recognize all of Hanukkah from that miracle, right? That really all of Hanukkah establishes that. But for us to be able to commemorate it, to tap in, to access that energy, that light, that is ultimately going to happen l'asur lavei when Mashiach comes. So we can't fully observe that today. And so therefore, we have to celebrate all of it on the 25th. Okay? Note 42, we don't... Right. It only was those 8 days. It doesn't happen every year. Today, for us to be able to have, imagine, what would be a modern day application of it if you ate only one latke the whole Hanukkah? And that satisfied you the whole Hanukkah. That would be Havai de Le'ela. Right? But we see that we're not like that yet. It's a siman that we're not fully there. We can't really tap into that miracle. Okay, let's... Exactly. Let's finish chapter 8, and if we don't have time to get to 42, it's an interesting order. Okay. So maybe Hashem's will that we should have fulfilled within us, that Hashem stands with us in our time of distress. What's the time of distress? Tzara, the koyal clothes in Yagol. That's talking about exile, which is the worst distress that we can experience. And the Rebbe says here in the brackets that even though now everything's wonderful, nevertheless it's still tzara. Even though we know that we've already been through the worst, harshest time of exile, as the middle Rebbe says, and we know that we won't have another tragedy, won't strike again. We've already, it's been enough of what we've been through already collectively in our history. Now everything is good. The prophet says that in the times of Mashiach, so the kings will be your nurturers and ministers will be your servants. They'll take care of us. So and that's already happening today. It was already happening in the time of the Gemara. It's a story about Huna bar Nasan. We already had some kind of fulfillment of this. The Rebbe says, even though now everything is wonderful, and we're already establishing that we've in a sense already lifted the facade of exile, where we already know, like Avram Avinu was going to the Akedah, and suddenly he sees, the Satan is preventing him in all kinds of ways, and he kept going straight. And what happens? He realized that the whole thing was a facade, the whole thing was fake. And we're already serving Hashem in that way, where we're going straight through everything. Nevertheless, the fact that we're still in Golos, it's the ultimate tzara. It's the ultimate distress. And we ask, when we say Valanisim, that Hashem, just as He did then, should be with us now in our tzar, meaning, the Kivin Shebachol Tzarasim Loy Tzar, not just that He should deal with us with our problems, but since in all of our tzar, our distress, He is distressed, Loy Bavav, that He's also distressed, certainly Hashem will speedily take us out of exile, that Hashem will return those captives. But like Rashi points out, that He Himself will go out.